I now call on Stewart Stevenson to wind up. Minister, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer. May I start, as others have, by thanking Willie Coffey for raising this motion and giving us the opportunity to debate it. But may I also in particular highlight the very substantial quality of the research and engagement he clearly demonstrated in his speech. I think there will be no one who's here tonight or who reads it afterwards who will not learn something that wasn't in the ministerial brief, for example, or in our own research. And I think Willie's example of how he's dealt with this is something others should follow. And of course, like others, it is utterly with regret that fatal accidents occur, and I would like to echo the statements of others in expressing the sympathies of I and my colleagues of Parliament generally with the friends and families of those who have lost their accidents in the recent fatal at Halkirk, accidents at Gateshead near Kilmarnock and Loudon early in this year. We do of course note that the emergency services responded as you would expect in the professional manner to these. Willie Coffey addressed the issue of Lord Cullen's report, which is very welcome. Lord Cullen, of course, is someone with a track record of producing substantial reports on matters of concern where safety is concerned, but it certainly is of interest that the submissions to Lord Cullen's deliberations from a range of bodies who might be thought to be substantially engaged in the issue have been so modest. I'm sure my colleague Kenny McCaskill will be looking very carefully at the issue of FAIs. I'm sure that action will be taken. The paucity of information that was available to Willie Coffey when he was researching this certainly would suggest there is a case for action. Jamie Stone talked about the recent accident at Halkirk, and of course there was a previous one in 2002. I would just make the general comment that in the 2002 accident is the subject of some court action. I will say no more about it. And of course, there may yet be other court issues associated with the accidents that there are. But Jamie made the fundamental point, fundamental question, why should there be barriers? And I think he exemplified the problem in saying that. The £1.2 billion profit, of course, in a sense, is merely, therefore, the public's money coming back round the system, because Network Rail are a not-for-profit company. So I think it is perhaps slightly difficult to talk about profit in the context of this company, although the balance sheet and the annual reports do show that. Rob Gibson highlighted Dingwall and the issues there and asked about speed cameras. I'll certainly seek to follow that up. And of course highlighted the trauma, not just for the families of those who are killed or injured at crossings, but also the effect on people employed on the railway. The ASLEF, I think it is ASLEF anyway, who've suggested that there should be a slowdown and the slowing down of journeys for people. That is very important, because one of the key things we want to see in the railway is the speeding up of journeys. So anything that does slow things down is something that I would regret. Charlie, of course, is an old railwayman, or railwayman of long standing, perhaps I should more properly say, made the very clear point that signs and signals should be adhered to. And of course, no one will dispute that. I will just make the observation, because as part of my modest personal research, I asked my wife, who's been driving for 35 years, if she's ever driven across a level crossing. And she said she'd not. Not because she's avoided them, she just doesn't happen to have done it. And I wonder to myself whether the unfamiliarity that some drivers will experience can contribute to near misses or to actual accidents. And of course, the flashing red light is something that's unfamiliar. The steady red is something people are familiar with. I think there are a range of issues around the psychology of how level crossings are controlled that should be further considered. But I took from one particular thing that Charlie Gordon said, and I captured it as safety should trump finance. And I think that would be something that we would all agree. SPADs, of course, mean something in this Parliament, in government, but signals past at danger are something that is part of railway folklore. I think I'm correct in saying the numbers of these, following some focus on it, are actually on the way down. So I don't think that drivers of trains should really come in our sights as a contributor to the difficulty. I don't think on the railway there's a culture of drivers crossing lights perniciously. Dave Thompson talked about one crew, and I think it was particularly interesting what he said, that it took some time to persuade Network Rail that the fault was present. And I think that leads us absolutely neatly to the complexity of the people who are involved. Procurator, Fiscal, BT, Police, Officer, Rail Regulator and Rail Accident Investigation Branch have a memorandum of understanding, but when you have a quadripartite memorandum of understanding, the number of communications that there are is therefore 4 factorial, a number rather larger. It will be in fact, of course, 18 different communication paths between the 4 people. So you get the complexity every time you add someone to it. So there is a high degree of coordination, but clearly there is difficulty involved in that. I very much welcome the review currently being undertaken by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch through a special set of skills into the safety of automatic open-level crossings, and we'll wait and see what they have to say. I think it certainly will be time to consider whether there are opportunities for further reviews. And perhaps looking at some of the things that happen in the marine environment and the aviation environment. If I say to you in aviation, where there is such an intense focus on safety, in my own flying career, when I had to make an emergency landing in a light aircraft because of a failure of equipment, it was interesting. Although this was the first failure in that aircraft type around the world, and there were many tens of thousands of this type, it nonetheless led to a mandatory change in all 20,000 aircraft in every country of the world based on that single incident in an aircraft that had not had an incident in 30 years of operation. So I think that approach to safety is one which we should commend to ourselves. I very much thank Willie Coffey for bringing this to Parliament. I will continue to engage with members as things develop. This is not a matter of party dispute or debate. It is a matter on which we'll all agree safety on our railways. The safest part of our transport network, but still capable of improvement, is vital. Presiding Officer.
And I close this meeting.